Hi, everyone. It's a matter of immense pleasure and honor that I'm here, invited by a foundation from a country that's very close to my heart. We are actually doing a path-breaking pilot in UAE with Emirates Health Services. Talking about artificial intelligence. The adoption of AI across industries is varied, but the transformation has already begun. I don't have to tell you, with ChatGPT, etc., Gemini, all of you have been using one or the other AI tools. Global AI market is expected to grow to $826 billion by 2030. And 38% of the companies expect a positive boost in profitability from AI adoption. There has been last year more than $100 billion in AI venture funding, which was an 80% cumulative growth over the past years. And no surprises, 55% of all investment in AI has been in the US. 92% of the companies that were surveyed recently plan to increase AI investment by end of this year. However, only 1% of these companies can be considered AI mature. You might have in the past week heard many news articles, read many news articles and comments around the fear in Silicon Valley that the AI bubble is going to burst. Actually, people are predicting the worst hit would be AI data centers. The current revenues of the industry is about $20 billion. And just to break even on the capex spent this year, the industry needs to have revenues of anywhere between $320 to $480 billion. That means there is an overinvestment. If you talk about the horizontal AI, I was in Hong Kong yesterday, and before that in Shanghai. There are over 2,000 companies in China doing large language models. The world's largest incubator for foundation models is in Shanghai, with over 100 companies incubated there. So everything which is horizontal in AI is going to become a commodity. There is this famous phrase, data is going to eat technology for breakfast, which kind of underlines what I just said, that horizontal AI, large language models, and everything which is horizontal, including infrastructure, is going to become a commodity. What is going to remain a differentiator is the vertical AI, domain-specific AI, which drives real business value. You would be amazed to know that NVIDIA's current market cap is about 4.6 trillion. And the combined market cap of all pharmaceutical companies today, including Pfizer, Amgen, Merck, etc., is about $4.2 trillion. So it's $4.6 trillion for NVIDIA, and $4.2 trillion is the combined market cap of all big pharmaceutical companies. The ratio is 1 is to approximately 0.9. 5 years ago, this ratio used to be 1 is to 40. And I don't have to tell you, the combined pharmaceutical sales in the world stand at about $1.3 trillion, growing at about 6% compounding annually. So all these pharmaceutical companies are creating a lot of value, addressing the big healthcare challenge. Yet, the biggest pharmaceutical companies are not capitalized even at par with NVIDIA alone. As I said, horizontal AI is plateauing. It's becoming a commodity. General purpose models excel at conversation, but there is no decision-making depth. If you use fine-tuned large language models for healthcare, you see a lot of biohallucination. As I mentioned, vertical AI brings domain intelligence. There is a new fancy term which Gartner recently published a report about and featured us. It's called the Domain-Specific Language Model, DSLM, or small language models. DSLMs are going to drive future growth. And biology and medicine trained models reason over molecular, clinical, and trial data and link text to therapeutics. It's not just text, it's multimodal, images, voice, videos, etc., but specifically for a specific domain. The third hypertrend that you see is about federated learning. Federated learning unlocks restricted data. In healthcare, many of you would know there is a recent report by Ernst & Young. High-quality oncology data sells for up to $5,000 per patient. There are digital health companies charging up to $100,000 per patient to broker a patient to the right clinical site. Because most of the sites, clinical sites, are not able to recruit patients in time. And there would be no wild guesses required to guess that not even 1% of this value goes to the patients or the hospitals that make the biggest investments for the upkeep of this data. There are also legislations such as GDPR and HIPAA that mandate three essential elements. A, you need an explicit, dynamic, informed consent from patients to be able to do analytics on their data. B, you need a similar consent if you want to commercialize the output of these analytics. And three, most of the jurisdictions mandate data localization restrictions. So data cannot leave the country. China, KSA, UAE, India have data localization restrictions. With federated learning, you can train local models. The data need not move, let alone the country, but a hospital premise. And you can move the gradients and train global models. For healthcare data, this is a big boon, big boost, because the data is siloed in various entities. You go to an MD Anderson, your cancer data, if you're being treated for cancer, is sitting there. But your other electronic health records data might be sitting at other centers with your GP. You have variables. That data is with you. So only if a patient gives consent and allows to train a model in a federated way, because an institute might not unlock this data, you can get 360-degree view of this data. And this is possible. Very recently, NVIDIA has launched a federated learning framework called NV Flare, which we are deploying. Again, depth drives defensibility. Vertical models learn from structured biological truth and not noisy web data. People say the data that's published in scientific literature, even that data, that experimental data is not reproducible. They say over 80% of data that's published cannot be reproduced. Imagine the quality of data that's available in the web. But with getting preclinical data, experimental data, real-world data through federated learning and creating a vertical model, you can improve depth and hence defensibility on your models. And hence, from generic AI, which uses natural languages, mostly textual data, we are moving towards precision intelligence with vertical AI or domain-specific AI. Now, in healthcare, most of the artificial intelligence play has been focused to solve the fuzzy problem. What is a fuzzy problem? Where you need a lot of hit and trial, where success is not guaranteed. The fuzzy problem in healthcare is drug discovery. It's a sexier problem to solve. You can rally a lot of capital, but success doesn't come easy. And hence we see a lot of AI plays in drug discovery and development have not been successful. I believe a bigger and a more important problem to solve in healthcare is not the fuzzy problem. Even in drug discovery and development, it is the efficiency problem. Today, there are over 18,000 drugs in clinical development. Guess how many drugs were approved last year by US FDA? 50. 50. Isn't it commonsensical not to put all your efforts and energy to discover even more drugs, therapeutic assets, but to deploy this energy and efforts to get assets, therapeutic assets, drugs that are already discovered for right diseases to the right patients faster and in a more cost-efficient manner? Once a drug is discovered, questions need to be answered, such as whether this drug alone would be efficacious, or should this drug be combined with another drug? What is the best disease for which you could have a high probability of success? What is the right set of patients? And of course, clinical development. The second inefficiency that needs to be addressed with AI is the in and out licensing process. It's the most siloed, value-destroying process in the industry. Pharmaceutical and biotech companies review their drug development portfolio periodically. And often, drug discovery projects or development projects are deprioritized because of financial or strategic reasons. There is a big pharmaceutical company that invested billions of dollars in building an oncology portfolio, and one fine day decided they don't want to be in oncology. No wild guesses to predict that that portfolio remained without investments for a couple of years with that pharma, those drugs lying around which could have potentially saved lives. Another real-world case, there is a big pharmaceutical company based in the US. Their critical threshold to decide whether to invest or not to invest in a drug development program is annual sales of about $2.3 billion per drug. So there can be a drug that's predicted with an uptake and sales of $1.5 billion. It could save lives, but that drug is deprioritized and does not get requisite investment. Of course, biotechs and pharmaceutical companies eventually take a decision to out-license that drug to someone else who would like to develop that drug. But research shows it takes approximately 3 years to execute this out-licensing decision. Now, these therapeutic assets, these drugs, are dying assets because they have limited patent life. A phase 1 drug has about 12 to 14 years of patent life left. So if you're wasting 3 to 5 years, it's about 25 to 30% of the net asset value of that drug. So this process is not just value destroying for the patients who await better healthcare outcomes. If these drugs were to be out-licensed to someone who would actually develop them further, it's also value destroying for the shareholders of these companies. These inefficiencies, everything post-discovery, and inefficiencies pertaining to the in and out licensing process are a $50 billion a year opportunity for AI, as per a recent report of Morgan Stanley. And the timing cannot be better, given 9 out of top 10 oncology drugs today and 6 out of top 10 drugs in terms of global sales are going to lose their patents in the next 3 years. The so-called $300 billion patent cliff. So everyone wants to ramp up their pipelines, but they stare right into these colossal inefficiencies. What we are trying to do on the inefficiency side, leveraging AI at scale, in the first bit, we identify drugs that, according to AI, are going on a suboptimal path. We buy those drugs and put them on the right track. So you have a pipeline of oncology drugs. We also are creating a NASDAQ of drug assets, wherein we work together with our partners and say, if you have a drug, active or deprioritized, what is the best disease for which this drug should be developed? What is the most optimal clinical development path? And if that most optimal path for that drug is not strategically interesting for you, we help you out-license that drug, that therapeutic asset, to someone else. And here, there is one example wherein one of our partners, Sanofi, was developing this drug in phase 2 for Alzheimer's. And we, with our platform, identified that this drug Capsarod would actually have a higher probability of success in a gastrointestinal disease, not in Alzheimer's. And we were able to out-license this to a partner called First Wave Biopharma, which, if we wouldn't have done so, would have led this drug to sit around with our partner and not reach the right set of patients. And it's not the only drug. There are many drugs that see similar fate, and AI can be leveraged to bring these drug assets faster and in a more cost-efficient efficient manner to patients who need these drugs. I already mentioned the domain-specific language model play. It's not about large language models. It's about domain-specific language models. We started off in 2016, and in 2017, when NVIDIA was not the NVIDIA of today, we bought 2 supercomputers in a box, 2 DGX1s. And we started indexing over 30 billion URLs that we were crawling to create the world's largest knowledge graph in this space. Today, of course, we have to deploy over 1,000 H100 GPUs to do the same. But that specific language model, domain-specific language model, has become the bedrock of all the analytics we do with our platform. And similar approaches are working in other domains as well. Essentially, when you develop a DSLM, you leverage on a so-called language of the domain or an ontology. And there are various ontology-based approaches, also, for instance, in financial services and other domains. We, of course, started this off while I was in consulting, and my first boss and mentor was diagnosed with a life-threatening disease. So we always keep impact at the core of what we do. And we have deployed similar approaches or the same technology to create value for children and mothers in two of the projects that we have deployed. The first project that we have leveraged is for dyslexic children with learning inabilities, wherein we use the same technology that we have developed, the stack. We have about 200 patents and over 350 outstanding patent applications to look at how children react to certain questions and use a metric in the back end to predict whether they have learning disabilities. And we also help them train to get better. The second project, which is close to my heart, is actually called Lullaby. It's for speech-impaired mothers who cannot sing lullabies to their children. The machine records their speech and then transforms those speech fragments into lullabies that they want to sing to their children. And both these platforms are being used by thousands of mothers and about 80,000 children. We launched this in India, and we have got enormous resonance. And we are deploying it as we speak with our partners in the Middle East and in Latin America. Of course, we, through these partnerships, have been successful in creating resonance around not the business, but the ideas we stand for. Summarizing again, that AI cannot be generic, horizontal. In healthcare, it has to be domain specific. 2, the data in healthcare is siloed, is fragmented. In order to tap this data to train AI at scale, you need to deploy federated learning, and you need a model which is equitable, which gives a say and incentives to not just patients, but also hospitals that invest a lot in the upkeep of this data. You have to make them true partners instead of exploiting them and patients for their data, aggregating all this data as a middleman, because without getting consent from patients, you won't be able to derive the full value of this data anyhow, because it would be anonymized and siloed. And 3, instead of always picking up the hardest problem to solve, you can create a good business and at the same time create enormous impact in the lives of patients by solving the problem that is solvable. So instead of looking at a fuzzy problem, such as drug discovery, why not solve a problem that stares into your face, which is significant and which could create great impact for the patients of today? And hence, we have been leveraging AI to derive efficiencies, both downstream post-discovery, but also in the in and out licensing process. And with this, whatever we do, purpose and impact has to be at the core of any enterprise that's built on the foundations of AI. And hence, the technology that we have developed, if it can be licensed out for the betterment of mothers who are speech impaired, for dyslexic children, we do that. Last, we are doing a project in UAE, which should be a game-changing project, together with EHS, Emirates Health Services, wherein we are deploying data of diabetic patients from the US, Europe, Asia, and UAE to create a prediction model which would predict the onset of diabetes for different patients years in advance, and would also prescribe corrective measures. I hope we all, in one or the other way, could be ambassadors of AI to do better for patients and all of our humanity working together. With that, thank you so much.